The third joint commission for strategic cooperation between Venezuela and Turkey was installed in Caracas with the purpose of reaffirming ties in favor of peace and strengthening bilateral economic development links. Russia on Friday rejected United States President Joe Biden's plans to seize and repurpose set of wealthy Russian to aid Ukraine. The United Nations lamented the lack of international financial aid to Yemen, which is experiencing a humanitarian crisis as a result of the war that began in 2014. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The third joint commission for strategic cooperation between Venezuela and Turkey was installed in Caracas with the purpose of reaffirming ties in favor of peace and strengthening bilateral economic development links. The sectoral vice president of economy, Tarek El-Aissami, explained together with the Turkish minister Musled Kazgoglu that up to date, different agreements were signed with Turkey in the areas of agriculture, energy, education, and tourism. El-Aissami underlined that in financial matters, Caracas and Ankara made progress in implementation of legal instruments that allow the acceleration of bilateral trade and foreign investments. The Venezuelan official also thanked the Turkish diplomat for promoting the impulse of growth in relations between the two countries.
During these 2 days, the technical teams of both countries in the Third Joint Commission of Cooperation between Venezuela and Turkey carried out an intense and extraordinary day, which allowed to increase the political dialogue and to strengthen the strategic and bilateral alliance, with the expansion of a legal framework of cooperation.
The Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu expressed that his government will continue to strengthen the alliance with Venezuela and its people.
We just visited the Museum of Bolivar, the liberator of Venezuela, father of Venezuela. Bolivar is an inspiration for the Turkish world, and the Turkish people are a friend of Venezuela. Here we feel at home. In the difficult times, we were beside Venezuela, and we will continue to be together with Venezuela, and we will follow the decisions we took at the end of these meetings, and we will take the necessary steps together.
Some of the airlines that deny not to fly to Venezuela after the U.S. economic sanctions against the country are returning today. The report is here with Madeleine Garcia.
Portugal's TAP airline has resumed its flights to Venezuela as a symbol of dialogue, economic and political stability. The page has been turned on the conflict started in February 2019 when the airline boarded self-proclaimed President Juan Guaido from Europe under a false name, violating aviation regulations, thus been suspended for 90 days. So they have announced that they have returned to Caracas after being approved for operations in a country for which there is increased interest among Portuguese travelers.
We recently opened 2 new routes to Spain and Portugal. The first TAP flight has finally arrived after more than 2 years. We have now 6 flights to Spain with different Plus Ultra airlines. Conviasa is doing the Mexico, Panama and Dominican Republic flights as well as Bolivia. There is an interest from Chilean and Argentinian airlines to return to the country. We have signed an extension of the agreement establishing the commercial relations with Chile and Argentina to broaden the spectrum of this relationship, and we have had meetings with Peru for an air service agreement that did not exist.
Venezuela showed the world that it is able to grow in the aviation sector despite the illegal economic sanctions imposed by the United States and the blockade. And although the airspace is not completely open due to the pandemic, there are many airlines requesting permission to open their routes.
That means respect, because even when they do not have a similar political position or do not agree with Venezuelan politics, they respect Venezuelan civil aviation because despite the sanctions and the blockade, They have realized that we have succeeded in our endeavors and that sanctions have rather been a motivation for us, and we are flying along without anyone's guidance and growing, making things better every time. And a good example of this is that Venezuela has been opening more international routes.
On the private sector, such airlines as teleSUR, which did not abandon the Venezuelan market, are hopeful about recent developments.
Venezuela is a strategic point and everyone would like to come here. At one point, they withdrew because of the conditions of the country. Sanctions that are affecting us a lot also appeared, and then they were removed. The pandemic came too, but now they all want to return. The important thing is that they want us here.
Little by little, Conviasa, Venezuela's state airline, has expanded and continues to grow. By the end of this year, 2022, it will reach 22 international destinations, and although competition dictates safeguarding one's interests, best lesson is to open doors even to those who try to shut them for Venezuela.
We, from here, from the air sector, will welcome the airlines that wish to come to Venezuela. There is a market that some airlines at the time decided to abandon, and that is the Venezuelan airline market. Venezuela being the natural hub in the region where fuel is cheaper, the airport infrastructure is cheaper, but they decided to bow to an illegal strike, to illegal sanctions. Today, Conviasa has undoubtedly occupied space, and we are seeing that many airlines that at the time left Venezuela are showing signs of wanting to return to Venezuela.
Venezuela is working to become once again the hub of the Americas, that is, the connecting center for passengers and cargo from the region, taking advantage of its geostrategic location. Currently, there are 32 airlines flying to Venezuela, 9 of them international, of which 5 for passengers and 4 for cargo.
Madeline Garcia, teleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
In Mexico, President Andres Lopez Obrador announced that he will send to Congress a proposal for a constitutional reform to guarantee transparency in the elections.
We just want there to be an authentic and true democracy in our country and to put an end to electoral fraud here.
AMLO met with Biden via video call to discuss migration and the Summit of the Americas. According to Mexican head of state, it was the U.S. government, the one that requests a video call through which he expects mutual respect, as has been the case in recent years. The White House announced a topic that both presidents will address, such as the vision for the 90th Summit of the Americas, which will take place next June in Los Angeles, California, and how North America can help a priority initiative for the region. And they also plan to discuss growth, competitiveness, and economic cooperation, security, energy, migration, and joint development efforts in Central America. From May 5 to 9, the Mexican president will visit 4 Central American countries: Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Belize, his first international visit to Latin American countries. The Prime Minister of Belize, John Antonio Briseno, who is on an official visit to Cuba, visited Fidel Castro Rule Center in Havana. Upon his arrival at the public institution, the premier was received by historic Renier Gonzalez Barrio, where they recalled from the exhibition halls of the Fidel Castro Center the most iconic moments in the life of the commander of the Cuban Revolution. During his stay, the head of the government of Belize signed a medical cooperation agreement with authorities of Havana to strengthen current health programs. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Just a month before presidential elections are held in Colombia, the candidate for a historical path, Gustavo Petro, seems to be leading the race. According to the latest poll by market research and consulting agency, Petro is poised to win the elections on May 29th, with 43.6% of the voting intentions. He is followed by Federico Gutierrez, candidate for a coalition Equipo for Colombia, with 26.7%, which makes him Gustavo Petro's main contender. These results also indicate that the candidate of the historical path, Francia Marquez, with 64.9%, is the candidate for the vice presidency with the highest popular acceptance. Russia on Friday rejected the United States President Joe Biden's plans to seize and repurpose a set of wealthy Russian to aid Ukraine. The vast funding requests include over $20 billion for weapons, ammunition, and other military assistance, as well as $8.5 billion in direct economic assistance to the government and $3 billion in humanitarian and food security aid. Russian officials also accused the U.S. and Poland of working together on a covert plan to establish control over western Ukraine and assert that the West, who was on current in Ukraine, to launch strikes inside Russia where gas depots and a missile factory have been set on fire or have been attacked in recent days. The Russian Defense Ministry reported on Friday that Russian airspace force destroyed military facilities in Kiev, the Ukrainian capital. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov confirmed at the press conference the precision-guided missile attack on 38 targets in Kiev. The Artyom missile technology factory, a fuel depot, and a radar station were among the targets. Ukrainian emergency services announced on Thursday night that nearby residential building was reportedly damaged on its lower floors by the Russian attacks. Local authorities indicated that at least 10 people were injured inside and 25 stored the building. Now, shifting topics, South Korea will ease its outdoor mask mandate starting next week as COVID-19 infections and hospitalizations continue to decline. Health authorities in Singon said from May 22nd, masks will only be required at outdoor gathering of more than 50 people, including sport and cultural events with potentially large crowds. Masks are still requested indoor and on public transport. Health workers have diagnosed a daily average of around 63,000 new cases in the past 7 days, including 50,000 in the last 24 hours, a decline from mid-March when the country was reportedly hundreds of thousands of infections a day at the highest of the Omicron driver surge. Hospitalizations and deaths are also slowing down. Less than a third of the country's intensive care units designated for the COVID-19 patients were occupied.
Until now, it has been mandatory to wear a mask outdoors if one cannot maintain a 2-meter distance from others. But starting from May 2, people will no longer need to wear a mask outdoors, except when attending rallies, performances, and sport games where more than 50 people gather. The number of COVID-19 patients has been steadily decreasing over the past 6 weeks, even after the social distancing measures were lifted. This week, the number of new virus cases decreased by 30% compared to last week. The number of new critically ill patients is also decreasing, and the bed occupancy rate is being maintained at a low level.
The Premier of Solomon Islands, Manasseh Sugabare, criticized on Friday Australia's censorship of the security agreement signed between his country and China. Sugabare said in an address to Parliament that the nation was not notified when Australia signed a defense agreement known as AUKUS when the United Kingdom and the U.S. in 2021 involved nuclear submarines. The Premier accused the Canberra authorities of acting hypocritically since AUKUS is far from being transparent. He also indicated that AUKUS will affect families of South Pacific areas by promoting this circulation of nuclear submarines in the region. Manager Guevara emphasized that he will not allow a Chinese military base in the country because it will not be a national or regional interest. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The United Nations lamented the lack of international financial aid to Yemen, which is experiencing a humanitarian crisis as a result of the war that began in 2014. Through a statement, the multilateral organization's population fund asserted that the lack of funding forces to reduce protection interventions in Yemen, while warning that at least 23 million citizens will request some type of humanitarian assistance during 2022. The institution affirmed that more than 4 billion people in Yemen were displaced from their homes as a consequence of devastated economy and precarious health system. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warned in a recent report by 2022 some 2.2 million children and 1.3 million pregnant or lactancy women will suffer acute malnutrition in the country. Kenya held a state funeral for former President Kibaki, who died at age 20 last week and whose decade in power was marked by economic revival. Kibaki was the third head of state in Kenya's history, serving from December 2000 to April 2013. Benches at Nyayo National Stadium in the heart of the capital Nairobi were full under heavy rain heavy sky as the processing companion Kibaki's coffin arrived, along ambassadors, officials, and members of the government. Dozens heads of state and prime ministers who were expected from across the African continent, including South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and South Sudanese President Salva Kiir.
Fellow Kenyans, we congregate here today to honor one of the founding fathers of our beloved nation. We are here not only to mourn an incalculable loss, but also to celebrate a magnificent life. We celebrate a man of faith, a man of family, a man of honor, and a man who always put Kenya and Kenyans first.
We remember President Kibaki for the leadership that he demonstrated, not only to Kenya, but also to the African continent. We remember him for his commitment to the people of Kenya and indeed to all of us as Africans.
The world commemorates this Friday, April 29th, the world's Al-Quds Day in solidarity with the Palestinian people in the face of the siege and occupation of their territories by the Israeli regime. The World Al-Quds Day is celebrated in more than 20 countries. Mobilizations, forums, and rallies are taking place in different countries with the presence of Muslims, Christians, and free-loving people. In Iran, demonstrators spread along several avenues of the capital until they converged at the University of Tehran. In this context, the Iranian embassy in Syria organized a meeting to support the Palestinian cause and reject the occupation and colonialism of the Palestinian territories by Israel. In Venezuela, the activities of the occasion of this day will begin at Plaza Caracas in the afternoon local. Libya is losing tens of millions of dollars a day from shutdown of its oil facilities, while global prices are the highest in years. Since Russia began its special military operation in Ukraine in February, triggering Western sanctions, global crude prices have reached levels unseen since 2014. On Friday, the United States benchmark West Texas Intermediate crude trade above $106 per barrel. Oil is the lifeblood of the North African country, trying to move past decades of conflict. But since mid-April, Libya's $2 Mayor's exports terminal and several oil fields have been held hostage of the country's latest political division. The Libyan closure followed the selection in February of the new premier, Fadi Bashkaya, by the nation's eastern-based parliament in the direct challenge to Tripoli-based interim Prime Minister Abdullah Deiba.
Regarding the answer to the question about the damage to the Libyan state during the closures, of course there will be a shortage in the revenue. The shortage in the amount produced reached around 600,000 barrels of crude oil daily. And then, when you see the rising prices today, even if the average price is around $100, that means the figure is at least $60 million per day.
Vietnam launched a new attraction for tourists ahead of Highest on Friday, with the opening of a glass-bottomed bridge spanning 150 meters above Allah's Hangul. The batch-long pedestrian bridge, whose name translated to White Dragon, sneaks around disinclined faces before spanning a dramatic villa between two peaks, hitting a total length of 632 meters. The floor of the bridge is made from French-produced tempered glass, making it strong enough to support up to 450 people at a time, while giving them a spectacular view for the greenery in the court far below. The company said it is the world's longest glass metal bridge, surpassing a 526-meter structure in Guangzhou, China. Officials from Guinness World Records are expected to verify the claim next month.
I think all is great. Stepping on the bridge and looking down was scary at first, but if we continue confidently, it is very amazing.
As a local resident, I hope more tourists in and outside the province, even abroad, will come here to experience this bridge to increase income for the investor and the province. The bridge was named Bakulong, showing a path of cloud that links the mountains. When standing on the bridge, visitors will be able to have a wide view and admire the beautiful nature. In order to provide visitors with the best experience, we have applied automatic control technology. By limiting the number of people at the same moment, we will limit no more than 450 people on the bridge at the same time.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English, I'm from the South, I'm Ana Marrero, and thank you for watching.